Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the underworld. The Star Wars underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-round good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
What's up, Star Wars fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. We are your source for the latest breaking Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion each and every week. And on this week's show, we are going to be breaking down part 4 of the Star Wars Obi-Wan Kenobi limited series. And stick around later in the show. We're finally going to be getting around to analyzing the trailer for the Andor Disney Plus show. All that and so much more on this episode of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. My name is Chris, and joining me, my good friend, Mr. Dominic Jones.
Yes, hello, Chris. Hello, Ben. Hello, everybody. I have to say, this feels like the first real post-celebration show.
Yes.
I know technically we did one last week, and apparently we talked about 3 episodes of Obi-Wan Kenobi on that, and this week we're only talking about 1. I don't really know how we managed that, but apparently we did it. But like this week actually feels like, okay, we've gotten back into the rhythm of real life, gotten back into, being home and all that stuff. Because last week when we got on the show and I saw everybody back in their little Zoom windows, I was just so disappointed in us. I was like, this isn't how it's supposed to be done. It's supposed to be in person. We're supposed to be waving a cell phone around, talking into it, or in front of a crowd at an IHOP. That's how this is supposed to be.
Well, y'all are the ones that left me, so it's not my fault. I'm still here. Disneyland's on the other side of that wall.
Literally on the other side of that wall. Yeah. Right. It's good to be back this week, and I'm really looking forward to not just talking about this great episode of Kenobi that we have, but also to break down the Andor trailer, because that's been percolating in the back of my mind ever since the Lucasfilm Showcase panel, and I'm looking forward to getting into it. It's going to be a great show. Heck
yes, and also joining us, it's Ben Hart, the Star Wars guy.
How's it going, everybody? It's feeling more normal here. There's not as much con crud in my system as there was last week, thank God. So I'm sounding a little bit better, hopefully, and feeling a little bit better. And also, Celebration feels like it was both yesterday and like a month ago. At the same time, weirdly. But as mentioned, we got some unfinished business from Celebration stuff that I feel like we didn't like. So much happened. Like in Celebration, you were in the eye of a hurricane. Like it's just like stuff just happening all around you, and you're like, oh, that thing. Oh, I see that's thing happening. That panel's happening. Like it's hard to keep up with everything. So we talked about the Andor trailer, but we haven't really talked about it. We haven't broken it down, so that's gonna be fun. And also, having one episode of Kenobi just to talk about this week is refreshing. Like just having one, okay? I don't need anything else. My brain is already overloaded. It's a lot to take in. So it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, I'm just glad that the Andor trailer actually got released online, unlike so many trailers this past week, or that last weekend, or whenever the hell that was. Because I was trying to think like, oh, what if we did like a breakdown of the Mandalorian trailer? And I'm like, I remember like 4 things from that. I know it was awesome. But I can think of like 4 or 5 shots, and the rest of it is like
I've been on multiple podcasts since Celebration going like, I think there was a Babu Frick, and there was a Star Destroyer, and that's not all I remember.
Yeah, like I remember the first half pretty well because we saw that a couple of times, but the back half is like I don't even know what happens in there.
Fuzzy.
And the Ahsoka stuff is sort of the same way. It's like I have a vague sense. With that one, it's a lot more like still imagery or imagery without a lot of motion or action. So I feel like I know it a little bit better. But then I try and remember Tales of the Jedi. I'm like, nope, not a clue. Not a clue. Remember the episode. I could feel like I could give a fairly succinct summary of the episode. But the trailer, I remember like 4 shots.
It was the episode and then a bunch of Dooku stuff. The episode we saw and then a bunch of Dooku stuff, I think.
Yeah. And no, there was more Ahsoka stuff. Don't ask me
Ahsoka
what it is.
in every age. It was Ahsoka in like 10 ages.
Yeah. So they need to hurry up and release those things online so that we can we can see it. I did see where somebody had posted and I don't know how they got this, but a full length version of the Bad Batch trailer that was shown in the room.
Wow.
That they had filmed of their screen. I don't know how they'd filmed of the screen at Celebration. I don't know how they got around the Secret Service agents that were walking through the crowd trying.
That one was intense. They weren't there for some of the other panels, but for that one, like they were there.
They were there. I noticed them for most of the panels, for most of the big ones.
I noticed.
The moment that made me kind of laugh was during the Tales of the Jedi panel. Someone tried to take a picture of the credits. Like nothing from the episode. Like they were trying to take a picture of where it said like created by Dave Filoni.
Yeah.
And one of those guys came up to them and made them like delete the picture. I was like, why? How is that any different from the ending of every Clone Wars episode?
Yeah, they did. Didn't they do for one of them like a compilation of like old stuff, and somebody got in trouble too for
I didn't
trying
notice
to film
that.
that. Yeah, because they don't know. They're just told if you see someone filming, go after them. They don't understand what's new and what's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I sympathize with those guys because they don't have, they have to be the bad guy. They're paid to be the bad guy, but it's still it is a little bit funny to see them like telling you, no, you cannot take a picture of those words on the screen that we've seen 100 times.
Yeah.
You have
I remember being in a panel, not a panel room, but one of the satellite rooms for the Mando Plus panel, and seeing that thing and being in that room and having security guards walking past by and thinking to myself, if I put my phone up, they're going to yell at me. Like they're going to do that. And then I go on YouTube and the entire panel is on YouTube. Someone recorded it in the room. I'm like, how?
Yeah.
They only cared about the footage. That was like, I will give credit to the Celebration organizers in this regard, is that you could take all the pictures of the panels that you wanted, of the people, of the celebrities, all that stuff. Go for it. As soon as they started showing footage, trailers, episodes, what have you, that's when the crackdown happened. And if you tried to take a picture of of a moment in there, that's when they would come for you. But stuff still got through.
What I wanted to do was I wanted to look at my phone for, at what time it was when they started doing the Tales of the Jedi premiere episode, because I wanted to calculate how long it was. But by the time that I thought to do that, it had already been playing for like 10 seconds. And I'm like, if I even take my phone slightly out of the pocket and turn it on to look at the time, somebody's going to be like breathing behind my neck. So we'll just estimate that it's like 28 minutes. 15 to 20-ish minutes or whatever it seems like.
I think 10 to 15 minutes is what but I did see where someone managed to get, I don't know if this is going to work, the moment.
It's got to get real close
from the
I did see that.
Yeah. Someone got this Sabine moment. Wasn't me. That wasn't my seat. You can check my social media. But someone got the Sabine moment from the from the Ahsoka trailer, which was harder. Like again, they planned that trailer so perfectly to make it difficult to capture that moment. For even the people that were going to get through the security, because the Ahsoka logo comes up, so you think the trailer's over. You think you're safe, but even if you're thinking, maybe there'll be a stinger, it goes to a black screen. And it holds on the black screen for long enough for you to think the trailer's over. They're going to turn the house lights on in a second. And then the Rebels mural pops up, and it holds on the Rebels mural for just long enough so that you think, this is just the Rebels mural. It's just there to, just there to, tease something that's coming down the pipe. And then Sabine walks into the shot. So it's long enough that you were probably going to trick a few people into stopping filming. even if they, evaded the Secret Service. In
Well,
the
when
room.
I didn't get to see that panel live. So when I was watching the film of it later, I actually stopped watching the bootleg before that point, and I was like, "There's no Sabine in this. What are people talking about?" And then the person who was showing it to me was, "No, it's at the end after all that stuff you just mentioned." I'm like, "Oh," and then I kept watching, and I finally saw it.
And
But
there
it
it was.
Picked me out.
Yeah, they trick you. Yeah. It's like a post-credit scene, right? For a trailer of all things. This is what Marvel has done to us.
Now every trailer that I watch, when the logo comes up, I like hold my breath. I'm like, oh, there's something gonna be after it. It's gonna be a post-credit scene. Post-credit scene where there's no credits.
And then you're so disappointed when it's just the Disney Plus logo with the lightsaber going over top of it.
Yeah.
Speaking of Disney Plus, we should talk about Kenobi. Let's plug some things first, though.
Yeah. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't. Super chat if you'd like to buy support the pancakes at the next IHOP party. Each super chat buys a pancake for a Jedi youngling who's been displaced.
By the way, anybody listening, any of our UK listeners, is there a UK equivalent of IHOP? Like, is there like
an International House of Pancakes? It would be there legally has to be one in every country.
There isn't like
IHOP. You have 10 months to build an IHOP next to the convention center in London or else.
An all day breakfast equivalent. The International House of Bangers and Mash or something. Like, what is there something? IHOP.
There we go. Okay, I've got up from visitbritain.com the 7 best places to eat pancakes in Britain. So
Okay.
There we go. So we got Southwark. I don't know how to pronounce these names. It's probably like South Worcester or something. Southwark or something. The Breakfast Club, London, Brighton, Oxford. That looks pretty good.
Oh, I like the look of this
pancakes. I love.
Someone taking notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where is that one?
It's not being filmed or anything and put on YouTube. This one's at Kensington, Holborn, and Chelsea. Then we got all Northern England. We don't care about Northern England and Cardiff, and probably not going to go there. Glasgow, but okay. So maybe this Dutch one. Because I had pancakes in Holland, and they were really good. They were really
listeners, you have to let us know, like, is there any place on this list that is actually as good as it looks? And also, if you think it's a possibility, they may let some crazy Americans do a podcast in their facility.
I think for this one, as as a representative of the British Commonwealth, I should be the one to. I'll sweet talk the managers into. I'll be like, look, the Queen's on our money too.
Yeah, yeah. So that works. So any super chats will go towards that, as well as becoming a channel member and supporting us on patreon.com/the SWU, where you can get rewarded with exclusive merch. You can also find awesome merch over at cultureslate.com/store. Make sure you check out the other shows in our network, Star Wars Culture and Ion Canon, and there was one other thing. Oh yeah, swunderworld@gmail.com is where you can send us emails, including not questions for Star Wars Celebration, your experiences at Star Wars Celebration. This is before. Now send your experiences at Star Wars Celebration to swunderworld@gmail.com. Give us detours. All right.
If you have any insider information about detours, send it in to swunderworld@gmail.com. All right. Let's talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi. Let's talk about Part 4, written by Joby Harold and Hannah Friedman, directed by Deborah Chow. Breaking into the Fortress Inquisitorius with Obi-Wan Kenobi, I think was what the subtitle should be. We're lacking in titles for this season or this show. We were just talking about that on the.
We got such great titles with Book of Boba Fett and Mandalorian. Now they're just like Part 4.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's sort of like this show was originally a movie, and more than any of the other shows, I would say it flows like from one episode into the next one. So in the end, Obi-Wan Kenobi really might just be a movie in 6 parts, or if Ewan is to be believed at Celebration, 10 parts. So
Harmony in 6 parts.
yeah, so I have a feeling that's where we might wind up in the end. But let's go around the table, give some initial impressions on part 4. Ben, as always, we'll throw it to you first. What'd you think of this one?
Yeah, I will say I think this one came down as just a bit of a mixed bag for me. Not like, I mean, like, I feel like I there's like 2 sides of my brain that work here. There's the super critical, I'm not sure how I feel about that. That's kind of weird, that kind of like critic side of my brain. And then there's the Star Wars fan side of my brain. It's like, oh my god, it's Obi-Wan fighting stormtroopers. It's just everything is firing on all cylinders. And so I'm, of course, geeking out, and I feel even petty for like bringing stuff up over this episode. But, not everything worked for me in this episode. And, it was kind of came down to a few things that I'll try to get into kind of over the course of the things. But, it did feel there's a bit weirdness with the special effects and the blocking and stuff like that. Kind of similar to what we had with the end fight of the last episode. That was like, I'm not sure how. Like, some of the shots look amazing. Some of the special effects look amazing. There's other times it's like, that looks a little cheap. That looks a little, things. And at this point, I'm thinking, okay, do I need to just get over this? Because it is a TV show and it's not a movie and it still looks amazing. It looks better than most every other TV show out there. But, it's just, again, critic brain just kind of going haywire here. But, seeing Obi-Wan break into the Fortress Inquisitorius and fight stormtroopers to save Leia from being like, it's madness. And there's so many great things that I love about this episode, and seeing the Jedi morgue in the bottom, like just so many things. But, also there was, some story beats that I'm kind of like, really, they did that? What's going on here? So a lot of questions, a lot of things that I really, really love. Some things let me scratching my head, but overall, I guess I enjoyed this for the most part.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot last week about the appearance and the style, the look of the show, and we talked about it as if it were a mistake. I think it's not. It's less a mistake, more a choice, and that doesn't mean you have to like it. You can still say, I don't care for that choice. I don't care for that stylistic choice. That's fair. But looking at the way the lightsabers look just in general, that was a choice to make them look more video gamey than they usually do. And, I'm not totally against it, but I'm not totally for it either. I'm kind of sitting on the fence on it. There's moments where I think it looks really cool. The stormtrooper scene, for instance, I thought looked really, really cool. I liked that a lot. And then there are other moments like the hallway where I'm like, I kind of like the more natural or classic look from the films where the lightsabers are. So it's becoming clear that this was a conscious choice on their part, not something that happened by accident, for better or for worse. Chris, over to you. Your thoughts overall on part 4.
So this felt like the type of episode that would exist in a 22 episode network television series to me. Because nothing really happened. It's interesting kind of hearing the visual and like filmmaking side of things from Ben, because some of those things I noticed and some of the things I really didn't. There were a couple things where I was kind of scratching my head like, why did they shoot it that way? That doesn't make sense. But for me, it really was the other side. It was the story and the script that I thought was probably just not good. Like, just thinking of the plot of the episode, my main gripe of it is it's part 2 in a different location. Like, everything in the episode is the same as part 2. Leia has been kidnapped. Obi-Wan has to go and rescue her. There's a face-off with the Inquisitors, and he gets away with Leia, and then they're at square one and have to go find him again. And the only difference is that this time that they're being tracked, and they weren't being tracked before. But like, it's the same plot as the second episode. It's just that it took place on a different location. So the only really added thing that we got was we got some lore about this fortress and some lore about what happened to some of the fallen the fallen Jedi, or the captured and murdered Jedi, essentially the purged Jedi.
Right.
That's what I'm looking for. But the story-wise, this episode doesn't need to exist. It didn't advance the plot barely any for me. There was only just a few lines of dialogue about the what number is she? Seventh? No, wait. Third 27th sister. The third sisters. There's so many sisters to keep track of. The third sisters.
Big family.
There was some dialogue that kind of gave her a little bit more dimension, but that was literally like a few lines in the entire episode. Outside of that, I felt like this just didn't need to exist, especially in a series that only has 6 episodes. Like, it felt kind of pointless to me.
See, I came into this episode sort of feeling like, I said the first 3 episodes were perfect. I won't say this one was perfect, but I still liked it. I think I still liked it the most out of the 3 of us. And I liked it because it gave us great character moments with Obi-Wan, with Leia, with Reva, and also with the new characters, with Tala, with we get a little bit with Roken, not so much, but with the other members of his crew. And we'll talk about it later, but I love the moment at the end when the cost of the rebellion sinks in for the characters. And that's something that I'm looking forward to seeing more of in Andor. And I'm liking this sort of it started with Rogue One and with Rebels, and has sort of carried through a lot of the television side of Star Wars, which is, the cost of the rebellion. It's not just, fun and games running around saving the day. There is a real sacrifice that is demanded. And it's a story that I think we have gotten before, but every time we get it is pretty powerful stuff. And this episode delivered on that. So it delivered on enough moments for me where I felt like I'm getting something interesting or new from these characters. That, yes, the fact that it's another, hunt down Leia and save her story didn't bother me. Where, okay, the look of the lightsabers is kind of different, it's kind of new. It looks a little bit more like it's out of the Force Unleashed. That's okay. I'm getting what I need from this. That the stuff that isn't quite landing perfectly for me is holding up all right. I'm still okay with it. So I feel like this episode it serves a purpose in this story. Even if I will agree, there's got to be a 4th best episode, and this is most definitely the 4th best episode of the bunch.
Yeah, that way.
And to piggyback off of both of what you guys are saying, I think definitely the plot took a hit here or took a rest in the overall plot of the story. But I think the character moments, in my opinion, made up for it, because this was a moment. Actually, Star Wars Explained a great video about this, I think, dropped today, about kind of talking about Roken. But it was kind of like, it was a huge character moment for Obi-Wan. He really kind of became, this episode was kind of his, we've been comparing him a lot to Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. This was his Luke on crate moment. This was him going from reluctantly going through all this, being very grumpy about it, and being defiant that the Jedi are done and all this kind of stuff, to I am going to do everything necessary to make this happen. So much so I'm kind of convinced somebody else to get involved with this that doesn't want to be involved. Roken is Obi-Wan in the first episode. He's like, nah, this is not my problem. And This is once he's had time with Leia and then Leia gets taken away from him. That's when Obi-Wan takes everything to heart and is like, I'll do anything. I'm going to go get this kid. I'm not going to leave her, and I'll go by myself if I have to. This is a stark contrast to where we met Obi-Wan in the first episode, where he's like, it's not my problem. Leave me alone. Go find somebody else.
Yeah. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was saying I agree as well. I guess the thing too, because it was like slightly mentioned when you're talking about like the cost of the rebellion. Like, I didn't like the way they kind of portrayed the one character's death, whose name I couldn't even remember.
Wade.
Wade. Yeah,
that classic Star Wars name, Wade.
Like, to me, like, there's like 4 ways to handle hero characters dying, and I didn't like this way. Like, I like the way where like it just kind of happens and they kind of move past it, like Porkins, like, for example.
Nobody cares.
It just happens, and like, you know, they might be sad for a little bit, like Biggs or whatever. But like, then there's like the way they do it where it's like in a montage, but we don't really know the characters. Like in Order 66, for example, is a montage, and when one of the Ewoks dies in Return of the Jedi, it's kind of part of a montage of battle scenes. And then the other way is to actually develop the character first. Like, most of the character deaths that we see that are hero deaths that kind of mean something is we actually get to know the character a little bit before then. I don't like how they didn't develop the character before killing them off when there was that much made about it. Like, I felt like we should have had some scenes prior to that.
So I'm sorry, because I loved your reading, Dominic, of the scene. Like, it's the cost of wars, the cost of rebellion. Like, I like that a lot, but I hated that scene because, like, it's just like, what are we doing here mourning the loss of a guy? I have no idea who he was. I didn't even catch his name until he died. Why am I supposed to care? And that is like a cardinal sin in storytelling to me, is like when you put emphasis on something, but you didn't build it up at all. You didn't, like, if Wade had been a character or he had been with them the whole time and you got to know him and then he died, you're like, okay, that makes sense. You know, and another perfect example that's what you're talking about, Chris, in regards to, like, you have those moments where, like, rebel pilots die at Yavin. Porkins, I didn't, you know, I don't have anything against Porkins, but I didn't know him, so it's not that big of a deal. But I knew Biggs.
You guys are sociopaths. You're like, they're dead. Who cares?
Yeah, who cares?
No, but we're supposed to be meant to feel.
I knew Biggs, and I know when he dies, I feel something, and it's a good moment when it's like, oh crap, you know, you see Luke's, you know, emotions come out. So that's how you do it right. This was just like, oh my God, Wade. I'm like, who? That guy, he was named Wade. Okay, whatever.
See, I loved the fact that we didn't know him. I loved the fact that we didn't know him, but we still mourned him. Because I take more of an issue with, hey, let's just kill off Porkins, or let's just we're just gonna blow up a rebel pilot and just sort of say, all right, they're dead. Whoop-de-doo. That's cost of doing business. I feel like it supplies the show with more stakes, and it supplies Star Wars with more stakes. That given the fact that, you know, we're shown that these characters, even the ones that we don't really know, people do care about them. People are sad when they die. People are hurt when they die, and so to me it sort of puts their death into context. Yes, we didn't know them, but the fact that they died to help save Obi-Wan, to help save Leia, to help save Tala, all of a sudden that means something more. You know, like you guys are saying, who thinks about the other rebel pilots with the Death Star, right? We don't really think about their sacrifice. We think about R2-D2's sacrifice more than we think about the other rebel pilots and the Death Star, because we're given the moment where R2 comes back. the fact that Obi-Wan and Leia's mission here, this little adventure that they're on, is now, it doesn't just affect the two of them anymore. It's affecting the larger galaxy, even if it's just those those couple of people. And to me, I like that. I would rather, more in a character I didn't know than breeze past it and just say, well, that's the cost of doing business. There we are.
I agree with that, but what I would prefer over both of those would be getting to know the character.
Sure,
and I think that would have been a better way to do it. And it comes down to the difference between, like, is Star Wars a documentary or is it like a piece of art? And that's the difference. And it's like, if it's a documentary, then you're just going to be seeing what's happening. And it makes perfect sense if people you haven't seen yet in the documentary are mourning the death of someone who just died, who you don't know much about, that it's a documentary, it's accurate, it's reality, you're going to see it. But Star Wars typically is a form of narrative art, which is supposed to convey emotion to the person viewing it and experiencing it. It's a way to transmit emotions from the mind of the people creating it to the mind of the people watching it. And so if you're going to successfully transfer the emotion of grief, then you also need to set that up with the attachment that precedes it.
You're not wrong. I'm not disagreeing. But it still worked for me. Seeing it on the other characters' faces. When Maya Erskine's character, the look of horror on her face at what they've just experienced, that sold it for me. That was enough. I felt it in that moment. And it's built on, years and years of Star Wars storytelling up until that point of knowing that there are people out there who, they don't like the Empire. They want to stand up, but they don't really understand what that means. And in that moment, she understood what it means because of what Wade, again, great classic Star Wars name, Wade, what he sacrificed in that moment.
Is it the snow speeders that people are complaining about? I see a lot of people talking about the speeders, and all week I've seen people talking about speeders. I don't know what they're talking about.
T-65, I think. Something like that. V speeders. They're not really, if you watch Empire Strikes Back, they're not actually snow speeders. They are speeders that are adapted to the cold.
Right.
So they're just like T-65 speeders. I actually like that. They're like we see them.
I didn't have any issues with that. I thought it was actually kind of a cool cameo.
I am kind of wondering how they got 4 people into the back seat of that thing. That's a bit of a head scratcher, but I'll allow it.
Crammed in.
Well, I was looking for the giant tank attached to the sewage transport vehicle. Like, that's the thing that got me, is like, wasn't the point they were supposed to get there to haul sewage? Was that how they were getting into the Icebergus Fortress Inquisitorius?
They have the tow. See, they're not even like military vehicles. They have the tow cable to like haul stuff. Like, that's the purpose of the speeders. They are retrofitted with weapons. That's the mythology that I read. I'm a nerd, okay?
yeah. How dare you? How dare you bring up lore on a Star Wars podcast?
They're tugboats.
So that's what I like. When she said like sewage, I'm like, is it like, are they dragging around like sewage tanks? Like, what's the deal
that's
there?
what I was beginning to see, is a giant sewage tank, and yet they're just like there, and I'm like, well, that's kind of sus that they're.
It's a weird that didn't. It's like it's a line that you expect to come back. That like, oh yeah, they're like they were hauling sewage to and from the fortress or something like that. I don't know.
See, okay, they're there at the end. They're not there undercover. They're there to pick them up. They're there to swoop in and save them when things get hairy.
The shuttle.
Yeah, but they arrive on the shuttle at the beginning.
But wasn't the shuttle supposed to haul sewage?
No, the shuttle's like an Imperial shuttle.
Okay.
Then O'Shea Jackson Jr.'s character later is flying some other ship, but they arrive. Tala and Obi-Wan arrive on like an Imperial ship. Has nothing to do with sewage. It's just her ship.
I don't know where that line came from. It made me think that.
The sewage line is on Jabeam, right? They're saying that's what they're doing on Jabeam. That's their cover story on Jabeam, right?
I see. Okay. I thought it would be their cover story and infiltrating the base, and the line, it didn't come across to me correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I was so confused because of that.
And so the sequence on Jabeam, by and large, that's where my biggest issue with the episode is that sequence was where I would say the episode felt a little rushed. It felt a little, it's something that happens a lot in TV that drives me insane, where you have a scene where one character says to another, you have to help us. And the second character says, I'm not going to help you. And then they give a reason for why they're not going to help them. And then the other one goes, but I need your help. And then the second one goes, okay, fine, I'll help you. I'm like, wait, how did we get here?
That's literally what happens in this one.
There was a lot of kind of tropes in this episode. There was the let's all gather around a map and plan something and go do it trope, what you see in Star Wars many times.
I don't mind that one so much.
It was a little necessary, I guess, but it just seemed very run of the mill. Like, I've just seen this a few times in the past few years type scene. And then when they're going into the base, their homages to A New Hope bordered on, let's just redo A New Hope at a different location. There was a lot of very similar beats to it as in A New Hope when they infiltrated the Death Star.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was done intentionally, both as like a fan servicey thing, like, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But I also think that the purpose of this episode is the episode where Obi-Wan actually commits to getting back in the fight.
Yeah.
Through all the other episodes, he's trying not to. He doesn't really want to be there. He wants to just grab Leia, get her home, and he's out. This is the one where he finally commits, and we see him kind of struggling with what that actually means, what that's actually going to entail from him. There's the great moment where he's using the Force on the shuttle, trying to, move the, I don't know, looked like a headphones case across a seat. And you can see that his connection to the Force is diminished. And I think we're seeing, kind of Obi-Wan we're seeing him get back into the fight. And I think those steps are meant to show just sort of, this is him sort of figuring out what he has to do now, what he has to be now. He can't be Obi-Wan in the prequel. So we see him try to do that at a moment in this episode, and it doesn't really work for him with the water. He makes it work, but it doesn't work out ideally. And so I feel like this episode gives us him realizing what it's going to mean to be a Jedi, what it's going to mean to be Obi-Wan Kenobi from here on out. Now, I suspect at some point in the next 2 episodes, he's going to want to confront Vader again. I still am holding on to that idea that at some point Obi-Wan is going to seek out Anakin, thinking he can perhaps, correct one of his failures. But in terms of, actually being effective, whipping out your lightsabers and cutting down stormtroopers isn't the way anymore. The way is to just sneak by them, survive, live to fight another day so that you can be ready when the time will actually come where you can do what you need to do to forward the rebel cause, which is what he does in A New Hope.
What was odd about this episode is we're supposed to think, right, Vader is at this fortress because you see him.
Is he there, or does he arrive later?
He might arrive later.
They say early in the episode that they think he's off on his ship. He's not actually
that there. Right. That scene comes at the end after Obi-Wan leaves. I'm confusing the timeline. Which is more sense.
Excellent. The whole shaky cam, Vader angry, running at the camera, A+.
Yeah,
that was fascinating.
Very good, very, very good. But yeah, that ultimately what the point of the episode is Obi-Wan sort of beginning to understand his new purpose in the galaxy. Whether it relied too heavily on A New Hope callbacks, that's for everybody to decide individually. I think maybe, the stormtroopers,
that was the big one.
Dodging them with the, tricking them with the Force was perhaps a little bit much. But
I don't necessarily agree with this, but I have heard these things of kind of felt like they were kind of hitting all the marks of let's do pretty much the same things that Obi-Wan did on the Death Star and Cal Kestis did in Jedi Fallen Order. Like, like let's break the windows and hold back the water, and let's do all this. And there's not a lot of like truly original things that happen in the episode, and that's like maybe one of my criticisms of just
I
like
agree
it
with that.
It wasn't as innovative, and it wasn't like as surprising. There was a couple big things, freaking Tarasanubai, but also just the fact that like it just kind of happened, and you're just kind of like, they go in to rescue Leia, and they rescue Leia, and then they get out, and it's just like there's no. I hate to say I wanted a twist, but you kind of expect something to happen that wasn't expected, but basically what exactly is supposed to happen happened.
It was a very telegraphed situation. Whenever something would happen, I knew it was going to happen like a minute before, and then the whole episode played out pretty much how you expect it to play out. And like again, that was my biggest issue with it, was that again it seemed very much like a plot repeat of chapter 2, and essentially speaking, it's a plot foreshadow of a third repeat in chapter 6, presumably, because we know it has to end the same way. It has to end with Leia and Obi-Wan getting out of whatever trap they're still trying to set them. So like they're basically repeating the same story 3 times, because we know that it has to end the same way.
We don't know that.
Yes. Well, what else is going to happen?
I don't know.
The same thing. Because
I don't know what's going to happen. Like, that's the point.
Vader's not going to die.
No.
Obi-Wan's not going to die.
Sure.
Leia's not going to die.
Sure.
They're tracking them. They're going to try to confront them again. So what we're going to get is a third confrontation, and the end result of it is going to be the same result of this week and the same result of part 2.
I mean, if that's what you're worried about, then the show shouldn't exist.
Well, no, because
like,
the show has an opportunity to reveal things about the characters that we don't know, or show us things that we haven't seen before. Showing it once is good because we haven't seen that before. But basically what we're doing is we're repeating the same scenario again and again and again.
We are repeating a similar scenario. I grant you that.
Yeah.
But
I don't say seeing the scenario at all is a problem. I'm just saying we're seeing it being repeated is a problem.
I see that this is where I'm saying is we're seeing it be repeated, or we're seeing sort of a variation on the same one.
Yeah.
But we're seeing the evolution of the characters through that.
Yes.
We're seeing how they grow throughout these by putting them in similar situations and seeing how they react to it. We're seeing how they grow. We're seeing how they evolve. And that's what this show is for. It's to do these, it's to dig deep into Obi-Wan's story, into Leia's story, into these other characters' stories. And it's not about how the story ends. It's not about, does Leia escape? Does Obi-Wan escape? Does Vader escape? It's about, it's cheesy, but it's the lessons learned along the way. It's how do these events affect them? How do they inform the characters when we see them later on? And I feel like we do see that in this episode. Again, this episode's not perfect. It's got its issues, but I feel like it serves its purpose in the story. Not every episode can have a big twist to it. Sometimes you need to slow down the story and see where we've gotten to, see where we are, so that you can, go full speed ahead into the final 2 episodes. That's what I think. That's what I think this episode is for, is to see where Obi-Wan and Leia have gotten in their journeys thus far.
And I did like Hannah brings up the staring contest between Reva and Leia, and I did really like that scene. That was one of my favorite scenes of this episode, was that kind of revelation of Reva realizing that this person's strong in the Force potentially. Like I think that was really cool. It's great foreshadowing for what we get in the sequels.
Did she figure it out? She said, Reva said, "You're strong." I didn't personally take that as you're strong in the Force, but I could be wrong.
I feel like it used to be a bigger delineation between the two. I feel like with each subsequent piece of Star Wars media, the lines have been blurred a little bit between strong mentally and strong in the Force.
So Dave Filoni said something really interesting at Celebration, and it was during the Tales of the Jedi panel. And so I have to be a little bit vague about it. But he said something to the effect of, and I'm sort of struggling to remember the exact quote, and it's going to be tough without giving away what happens in that episode.
Oh,
so bear with me through this. It may not make sense, but bear with me.
I'll try to interpret it.
Dave Filoni asks if, is using the Force or just being a good person, is there really any difference?
I remember this.
And, you can say, of course there's a difference because, Vader chokes people with the Force, yada, yada, yada. But the point Dave was trying to make, and again, we have to revisit this in the fall when the episode comes out, because we'll have to revisit it then, because it's so hard to make this point without everybody having seen the episode. But, Leia resisting Reva's, her attempt to read her mind, to do the Kylo Ren, Darth Vader mind read thingy. Is that Leia using the Force to push her back, or is that Leia's strength of character, her will to not give up the path? Well, is there a difference?
I that's kind of what the point that's the point I was making, is like I don't feel like there is.
Yeah.
And I feel like Filoni, well, at least what I took from it, is like Filoni is kind of basing it on of what he was actually talking about in Star Wars universe, but also applying it to the real world of, like, George Lucas intended the Force to be a mirror of real world. We don't have a mystical energy field that controls everything in our universe, but we do have good and bad people, and we have emotions and all this kind of stuff. And you have all this, and you can see it through the lens of Star Wars, that, like, Star Wars just magnifies it all and goes like, hey, if you're selfish and you think about yourself too much and you get really angry, you're going to turn to the dark side. Or if you're selfless and you try to control your emotions, you'll be on the light side. That is also true in real life. And I like the idea of, like, doing it in a way that's saying, okay, what's the difference between being a good person and just using the Force? And I like that you can definitely apply it to the real world, but you can also apply it to here in regards to, what is Leia doing? Leia doesn't know this. And Leia doesn't know who she is or her power. And I feel like, logically speaking, Reva would have figured it out, because you have an extremely powerful Force-sensitive kid in your presence. You would probably sense that. But it's Leia, and it would break canon if she just freaking told Vader, hey, this kid over here is Force-sensitive. So maybe Reva has figured it out, and she's just keeping it to herself because she's being very mysterious. We don't know what her motives are.
I sort of feel like it might be interesting if Reva could kind of figure it out. If she could sort of put the pieces together that Leia is, Force sensitive. And then, in that classic dark side fashion, it would be interesting to see someone try to seduce Leia to the dark side. And that could be a potential storyline down the road. Unfortunately, I have a feeling that Reva is not long for this world or this galaxy.
Yeah,
if she's still alive 2 weeks from now, I will be shocked. She's an Inquisitor who is, trying to win the favor of Darth Vader at the expense of many other Inquisitors. That doesn't often end well for characters in Star Wars. But that could be an interesting storyline if they were to continue this into, say, a second season. But what I will say about this whole sequence with Leia, protecting the path, again, this gets at what I was talking about earlier, which is we're seeing the evolution of this character. We're seeing her growth. We're seeing how this story has affected her, because you look at where Leia is in parts 1 and part 2. She doesn't really want to do her part. She doesn't want to play her role on Alderaan. She doesn't want to have anything to do with, what her parents are doing. And then in part 2, she doesn't even want to go back to that world. She wants to go out there and explore the galaxy. She's running away from Ben. She, sometimes because she's scared of him, sometimes because she just doesn't want to follow his rules. Something happened last week in chapter 3, in part 3, where she realized the threat that was out there and the cost of her actions. And now this week, she understands that her choices, her actions, they have consequences. And she can't just act out of what's best for her, what she wants. She can't run away and hide in the forest anymore. Now she has to sit there and resist against Reva, against the Inquisitor, and protect this information, this critical information that she has. She's willing to sacrifice quite literally anything. This is, in a sense, what we're witnessing in this episode is Leia's first act of rebellion, her first true act of rebellion against the Empire. Because, Reva is doing the whole, we're all on the same side here. I can help you. The other people out there, they don't care about you. She's doing all that stuff that any little kid would be inclined to listen to. In fact, many adults would be inclined to listen to. And yet she's able to resist it. It's because she's realized over the course of the last couple of episodes, especially last week, that, what's happening out there with the Empire is wrong, and those who are fighting against it need to be protected, whether they're Jedi, whether they're rebels, whatever. And so, again, this is a scene that to me is why this episode is needed. You need this moment with Leia where, you're seeing her growth from a little kid into a future rebel leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's some strong character development for Leia, something that I didn't expect from this show. I didn't expect to have some big moments for Princess Leia, but here we are. And not complaining in the slightest, because I think this is great. I am wondering what, I'm not saying this breaks it for me, but I am wondering what the writers intend in regards to when you watch this and you see how close and how well Obi-Wan and Leia are to each other, and they almost have a better relationship than Luke and Ben do in A New Hope. It's at least comparable. And then you watch Leia's speech of General Kenobi, years ago you served my father in the Clone Wars. How does that interface with this? I don't want to go down the path of this is break canon and all this kind of stuff. No, I'm just making assumptions. Leia could easily bump her head at the end of this and lose all her memories, and we could be back to square one. But not ruling anything else. But I'm just gonna watch and see.
Wouldn't that be terrible? Just gets bopped on the head, forgets everything.
It reminds me of this right here.
Yeah.
Which I've seen in many formats throughout many years.
The image of Leia with the word resist.
Yes.
Underneath it for all of our audio listeners.
And I think it plays well into some of the books, Princess of Alderaan, the book where she's on the out, she's wanting to rebel, but her parents are not letting her in, or not letting her in on what they're actually doing, and it's not until she stumbles into it that she actually gets to join the rebellion. I think that interfaces well with what we're seeing here.
Yeah, I have to revisit that book. I remember it so little, and I'm wondering how it will hold up post, on screen young Leia, getting into scrapes with the Empire before that book. But that's neither here nor there at this moment. What else? What else do we want to cover? We've alluded to it, but we haven't really talked about the basement of Easter eggs with Terrace and Ube and the younglings and all of that stuff.
Coleman, Kid Jabba, Jabba,
Is he
Cartman.
Coleman Trebor is in there?
No, the other Coleman.
There's more than one Coleman?
If anybody else recognizes any of the Jedi aches besides Tara Sinube, I want to hear about it because
There was one more. There was one more who was on the Jedi Council during the Clone Wars, who never spoke a line, ever.
Really?
And he wasn't Coleman Trevor. He was like another Coleman.
Because there's always like two of everyone because like they recast and then they retcon
exactly.
Two new characters. So there's like two of everyone. You know, the whole Egan collar and
Coleman Cadge. Coleman Cadge.
Cadge.
Which one is he?
He's the one with the upside down head.
Oh yeah, that dude. It's
I'm
Coleman KCAJ.
Yeah. I'm trying to get a photo to appear, but thank you Google for those like weird WebP files that you like can't download. Like
and his Wikipedia thumbnail is not a very good quality picture. That just goes to show. And usually that's the best picture they have.
This guy.
Oh, okay.
Coleman Kakja. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Okay. I see. I saw Tara Sinube, and then we got the youngling later on. And I was like, okay, those are our sort of like main Easter eggs. Everything else is just kind of, we're just throwing in some other characters. But that's cool that there was another one, in there. That's fun. Yeah, I was wondering after they showed Tara Sinube, I'm like, okay, what other Easter eggs are they going to have? And I liked that they.
Papanoida?
I didn't see him.
I thought it looked kind of like him, but I wasn't 100% sure.
The character kind of looked like a Pantoran, maybe.
Okay.
Huh. Man, how much of a buzzkill would that have been if Quinlan Voss had been in that thing?
Oh, I was expecting it. I was expecting it when he started going around. I'm like, okay, this is how we're gonna end. Yeah, but I was very pleased when that wasn't the case.
No, I feel like Quinlan Voss should never actually get his own show, but he should just constantly be referenced in everything.
Oh. No, we had to see him.
Oh, Quinlan, he was just here. He just walked out the door.
Are you?
He's a character.
There's this TV show, the Frasier sitcom. There's this character which is Niles' ex-wife, Maris Crane, and she never appears on the show. She's only referenced, and she's like the butt of like a bunch of jokes, but she's never seen the entire show. So it's like that. That's what you're talking about.
You know who Quinlan Voss should be? If we're gonna make him into a sitcom character, he should be Wilson from Home Improvement. You never see him except for his eyes over the fence, and he can just show up and provide some wisdom every episode. Anyways, yeah. That was neat, and it felt like that tied in with Rebels as well. That like the tombs that they have down there with the the stuff with
Lunara.
Yeah, I was like, I almost expected to see her.
I didn't even think
in
about
there.
that, but that you're right.
Yeah, I was sort of expecting to see her in there. Like, yeah, it was a wonderfully disturbing scene.
I'm surprised. I'm actually shocked that the one chance Filoni had to bring back Plo Koon and his like fried mask, they could have had that in there.
Ooh, that'd been horrible. Just cruel.
That's the thing, though. It's like all the bodies were like intact. Like, what do they do with like they had to kill him somehow.
Yeah, I mean everybody's wondering how the Grand Inquisitor is going to come back. All those guys looked like they figured out some way to sew up their lightsaber wounds, and so they could be preserved.
They probably were all force choked.
Oof. Or
there's different wings based on different wounds, and the farther you go down the hallway, the worse it gets.
Is it labeled Jedi pieces?
Well, you know how in the Last Jedi we see the laundry room of the First Order, right? Well, so presumably the Fortress Inquisitorius has one of those as well, but down there they have someone whose job it is just to repair Jedi uniforms and Jedi clothes so that they can put them back on the bodies and cover up the wounds so they look preserved perfectly. Yeah.
Jeez.
I can't remember all the tricks. I once watched a video about all the Undertaker tricks, and
there you go.
Fortunately, I've forgotten all of that information. Fortunately,
Yeah.
But there's a lot to that, if I remember correctly.
I will say, I thought the Tara Sinube, I thought that was a character that I never imagined seeing in live action. It always felt like a very animated character. I always wondered how it would look translated, at least for that one shot. Tara Sinube looks pretty good. I hate
taller than I expected. I wasn't sure if it was him. I was thinking that's the same species, but is that Tara? Because he's kind of more hunched over in the Clone Wars.
Yeah, that's what I gotta think that was Tara Sinube.
No, it definitely was.
You gotta show that if you're gonna have that moment. And
yeah, the whole internet thinks it, so at this point they can't go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do that to us. No.
It's definitely him, but he was a little bit more upright, but then it's like, oh well, if you're stiff, then
I am surprised they didn't have some other bigger names, because I feel like a lot of people probably Tara Sinube went over their head. If you didn't watch Clone Wars, whereas have some, I don't know, throw some.
Is that common to come across people who haven't seen Clone Wars?
I don't know, but I mean, I'm surprised they didn't get Sam Jackson back. Get a Mace Windu in there.
There's a rumor apparently that he was in the corner or something shot.
Of course there is.
Well, see, but that's the thing, right? Unless you're going to get Samuel L. Jackson, I genuinely cannot think of another character that wouldn't be a quote unquote obscure reference.
I think like a Ki Mundi or a Illuminara or a Ail Sakura. I think that would 90% of the people would get that.
I think the problem is that these are all characters that we didn't see die on screen, and that's why it's interesting, because we're finding out that they're dead when we didn't know. Whereas all the characters that we would have known from the films, we did see them die on screen because it was part of the plot to show that they died.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it would have been funny to see Shakti have her 5th death and be in this.
And then everyone would be like, "It's Ahsoka!"
Oh.
Wait, no.
Just to troll everybody. All right. And what else? Anything else you guys want to bring up about the episode?
What happened to the TIE fighters? Did they blow them up?
What TIE fighters?
Weren't there a bunch of TIE fighters in the Fortress Aspergus hanging from the ceiling?
Just sitting, hanging from the ceiling?
Did they blow them up? Because when their ships are escaping, I'm like, why aren't they chasing them? Did they have no ships to chase them with?
Maybe, or because they're letting them get away.
It's the classic. I like the idea that Reva gives Vader the idea.
Yeah,
to let them go. Let Leia and everybody go in A New Hope.
Yeah, just letting them go.
You'd think these people would know that they're being tracked.
Also, they're T-47s. I forgot. They're not T-6. T-65 is X-wings. I just sir,
and T-16s are Skyhoppers, and the T-17s are the better, newer versions. I would half expected to hear that in this episode.
I will say, Tala slapping a stormtrooper. I can't decide whether that's the greatest thing or the dumbest thing in this episode.
I'm mad that we didn't get to see Obi-Wan in Stormtrooper armor. When he took out that Stormtrooper after he got out of his jacuzzi, I thought he was totally gonna be Obi-Wan in Stormtrooper disguise.
Yeah, the most unrealistic thing in the episode is that Obi-Wan didn't immediately put on Stormtrooper armor to get around.
And the other thing too is when Tala. When Tala takes out the officer, and then
Yeah, how does nobody hear that?
How does no one hear that? And then they're just lying behind the console. How does no one walk by and see their body just lying there? Like that's an odd shot.
Also, this is not a criticism. I genuinely love this moment, but just like the whole like stacking like the giant trench coat and Leia's under it, and they're just walking out, and the fifth brother just walks by. They don't even see him. Like it's just the best.
Yeah. No. Well, it's the thing, right? If you walk with intention, if you walk with authority, if you pretend like you're supposed to be there, nobody will question you.
We learned this at Celebration, at Star Wars Celebration. If you just pretend, you just act like you know what you're doing and just eyes forward, no one will stop you. And maybe you'll get into a panel you weren't supposed to be in. I don't know. Also, really quick, the fact that Tala did not die is the most surprising thing about both of these episodes. I thought she was a goner from the beginning.
But I kind of like it, like because
I love her character. I'm glad she survived.
And because that is the obvious thing to do. The obvious thing is to kill her off. Most shows would have killed that character off, but I like that she was able to survive, and I hope, like, all of this like proto Rebel Alliance stuff that we're seeing set up in this episode with Indira Varma, with O'Shea Jackson Jr., with Maya Erskine, like I hope that there's more to that down the line in something else. You know, we're going to talk about Andor in a second. How great would it be if like maybe not this season because this season's all shot, but maybe for season 2 if some of these characters came back for an episode. I think that would be really cool because you know, in a lot of ways, this show is really inward looking with Star Wars. It's about Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's about Darth Vader. It's about Princess Leia. You know, it's really focused on established characters, and you know, most of the new characters haven't been around for very long. Benny Safdie made it through one episode. Kumail was in one episode. So far, O'Shea Jackson Jr. has just been in one episode. Indira Varma's the only one who's made it through 2 episodes. But I feel like they could, you know, the show, even though it's so focused on 3 legacy characters, can still have a major impact on pushing the universe outward as well. If Roken or Tala or Sully or any of these characters come back and can, you know, continue to play a role in the storytelling going forward, even if it doesn't relate directly to Obi-Wan Kenobi and Princess Leia.
Yeah. And I like that it's not just straight up like we're the Rebel Alliance. Like it's a version of this. It's playing into the idea of like it's a bunch. The alliance is a true alliance of like a bunch of different people kind of on their own paths fighting against the Empire that actually come together in the end. Because when we saw, I think I was actually in the concept art, I think we saw way back of snowspeeders. I was like, oh, we're going to a rebel base, something like that. And like, no, you know, it's kind of that, but it's not really that. It's less on the nose. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this seems like as good a place as any to hit some final thoughts and scores out of 10 for the episode. And Ben, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. So like I said, I did enjoy this episode for what it was. I have my nitpicks. I have the things that left me kind of with my head scratching, but it ultimately kind of came down to like, there's some amazing moments. You know, you have Obi-Wan going in, turning off the lights and igniting his lightsaber and killing stormtroopers. And, you know, we've never like just seeing a Jedi taking on stormtroopers is something, especially in live action, we've never seen before, really. Especially Obi-Wan, a character that we've had for 45 years in this franchise, that started out, you know, on the wrong end of, you know, stormtrooper blasters. To finally see him take a lightsaber to them is extremely satisfying. And as much as I kind of poo-pooed the visuals, I think there was some really good visuals in a lot of cases. I think the whole Fortress Inquisitorius, I think, was really well done. And the fact that they used Fortress Inquisitorius, it could have been any random Imperial base. It really didn't have to be that. But they kind of went out of their way to create this great continuity and say, hey, look, this is the Inquisitors taking Leia, it should be that base. And, I think for anyone that's kind of like, oh, it didn't look quite the way it did in Fallen Order, just be glad we got it, because it didn't have to be that. So it really is. I appreciate the continuity. I appreciate the effort they went into doing this. So I could ramble all night. I will give this episode, I'll give it a 7.5 out of 10.
7.5 from Ben. Chris, what about you? Final thoughts, score out of 10?
I think measured against what this could have been, this was a disappointment. Like, I feel like you have Ewan McGregor, you have an actress playing Leia who's also incredibly capable. Moses Ingram, amazing. Like, there's so much talent here, and there's so much talent in the directing with Deborah Chow, and the writing, and the ability to make sets, that I just felt like this felt like, despite the grandness of the entire base and how much money probably went into making that, it did feel like a bit of an afterthought of an episode, a bit of an episode that didn't necessarily need to be there and didn't really push things forward as much as they could with so few episodes. So, I would give this a 7 out of 10. I think that there was a lot of missed opportunity in the 36 minutes that we had on screen. I think they could have done a lot more with those 36 minutes than they did to move the story forward, to delve even deeper into the characters, to have even more character-based moments. It's not terrible. It's, better than 50% good, because of some of those great character moments and the interrogation with Leia and some of the cool character, the character development with Obi-Wan. Like, it's still a redeemable episode. It's still worth watching, but so far it's the most inconsequential of the episodes that we've seen, and the series could be so much better than that. I think the benchmark should be so much higher than this episode.
All right, 7 from Chris. I'm gonna give this one 8.5 out of 10. Like I said, not perfect. It's got its issues. There's that weird scene at the beginning where character changes their mind way too quickly for my taste. And, there's a couple of other things along the way. I've decided I do like Tala slapping the stormtrooper, because what could possibly be more surprising to a stormtrooper than being slapped in the face? But her, beating up the Imperial officer behind a bunch of other Imperial officers and nobody noticing. I know we're dealing with laser swords and spaceships, but come on. That said, this is the sort of episode that I want from Star Wars television. The thing that sells me on Star Wars doing more TV than films these days is the opportunity to slow things down sometimes. Is to slow things down and do an episode that isn't all twists, that isn't all action, that isn't all driving the plot forward as quickly as possible. It's to have some character moments and to see Obi-Wan, evolving his perspective on what it means to be a Jedi, going from prequel era Obi-Wan Kenobi to original trilogy era Ben Kenobi. We're seeing that evolution play out over these episodes, and this episode was important to that. As we talked about with Leia, seeing her, evolve from a kid whose heart is in the right place, but is still a little selfish, a little focused on what she wants, to being somebody who is willing to risk it all for the Rebel Alliance over the course of these episodes. Not even the Rebel Alliance at this point, but for the path, for, this way out for the Jedi, is huge. And, and even just seeing what the impact Obi-Wan and Leia and Vader's story is having on those who aren't directly involved in it, but are being brought into it. And, I fully understand what you guys were saying earlier about wanting to, get to know a character so that we can mourn them. But this show is not about Wade, strange as that may be. It's about Obi-Wan Kenobi. And Obi-Wan Kenobi's actions have consequences. And we see those consequences in this episode, and Obi-Wan has to grapple with that. And I think we see him grappling with that when they're on the ship and they're sitting there and they're having that quiet moment. And what a beautiful quiet moment that wound up being when Leia takes his hand. And I think the meaning for that, meaning in that moment is for Obi-Wan is so layered. You know, for one, it's this kid who didn't trust him at the beginning is now beginning to trust him, now beginning to see him as, you know, her real guardian. But also Leia represents Anakin. She represents Padme. She represents all that Obi-Wan is lost. Here's a physical representation of, you know, two of the most important people in Obi-Wan's life who he feels he failed. And here she is trusting him in spite of everything. It's a really beautiful moment. It's a perfect way to end the episode. But then, of course, we have to pan down a little bit and see that Lola of all people has been, or of all droids, has been corrupted.
Sith Lola.
And has been reprogrammed to the dark side by Reva. So a real solid episode. Not perfect, but still very important, very good, and something I like to see. I like to slow things down a little bit from time to time and you know, focus in on the characters so that when we do have those action sequences, those big bombastic episodes that are coming up in episodes 5 and 6, they mean so much more. So 8.5 from me. All right. Let's talk about Andor. Let's talk about this trailer that we saw all the way back on all the way back. Was it? It's
Last
exactly
year?
2 months ago.
2 weeks. 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Actually, sorry. Before we do that, I meant to. People were putting their scores in the chat. We should.
We
should shout
do
those
that.
out. Joel giving an 8 out of 10 to this one. Matthew Hardy fallen in with a 7 out of 10. Sam giving it an 8 out of 10 and quoting me while doing so, saying it was fun all around, good times. Shadowcaster Fox giving it an 8 out of 10, but saying he would have bumped it up 0.5 if they had the one strike kill like Obi-Wan did with Maul rather than the multiple swings at the stormtroopers. Which I loved that scene. I thought that was
He was doing a Return of the Jedi Luke, just wail on him, baseball bat.
Doing that, yeah. Yanni gives it 8 out of 10. Can't wait for the last two. Vader's coming to Jabeem. Well, we'll see. We'll see where we wind up.
Goodland Voss versus Vader. Let's go.
And Kenny gives it 8.5 out of 10.
So in general, lower scores for this episode, although it seems like for most people an 8 it means they love the episode, whereas an 8 for us means there's a lot of problems.
I think for us I think 8 is like solid. You're like, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. I feel like 7 is like, I'm pretty good with that.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit more. 9 is like,
I think that's
excellent.
the problem with my personal ranking system is that I usually aim so high that when like I really like something, it's like, I got to go 10 out of 10 because, you know, when I don't like something, it's only, you know, a 7.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, the thing with the score out of 10, as with everything else, is totally arbitrary. Like
for the record, the Clone Wars episode Evil Plans gets a 0 out of 10 from me.
Which one is? Oh, right. That's the cat. That's the 3PO.
It deserves it. Yeah, I'll go with you that. The droid spa.
I give it a few points just because C-3PO doing math is hilarious.
Nomad Droids gets a 1 out of 10, and Mercy Mission gets a 3 out of 10.
I think on retrospect, I think Nomad Droids deserves like a 3 or something. Not that bad.
Okay.
Yeah. Joel is wondering with the super chat here how these episodes will pan out when binged.
Yeah.
And this is something I can't remember if this was something we were talking about earlier in the show or if this was something we were talking about on the pre-show today. You know, the fact that they haven't given these episodes titles, the fact that they're just calling them part 1 and part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, part 6, suggests to me that they're not thinking of these as episodes. They're thinking of this as one movie released in 6 parts. And so they don't feel the need to give them chapter titles the way they do for Book of Boba Fett or Mandalorian or anything else. So how will it pan out when binged? I suspect with this series in particular, it will, it'll feel like part of the larger whole rather than having to stand on its own. Chosen Nightwolf gives it an 8 out of 10. And Michael gives it an 8.5.
No nines. No
No
nines,
nines.
right?
Yeah, no nines. I think everybody's in agreement
Yeah.
that this episode is not perfect or not the best of the series. It's just how much do people enjoy it. Actually, no, that's a lie. I know of one person who really loved the episode. Jesse posted his score way earlier, and I can't find it. But he gave it an 11 out of 10.
That's
Yeah, I was
right.
gonna
He
say.
did. That's true.
So this is
There we go.
somebody's favorite episode. Of course, you can say
Yeah.
that about everything.
Yeah. So there we are. All right.
Now the average is a 10. It's great.
All right. Let's talk Andor.
There we go.
It's been 2 weeks since the Lucasfilm Showcase panel, and perhaps overshadowed by some of the other things that went down was the release of the new Andor trailer.
Yeah, that Indiana Jones poster really overshadowed that.
Not the Indiana Jones poster, but Indiana Jones being there. might have.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And the
Oh yeah, sure. You
composer-
come to Celebration, you call him Indiana Jones. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a Wookiee, kick a droid, five
there
Falcons,
you
throw
go.
an asteroid.
Music in my ears.
All right, let's give some initial thoughts on the Andor trailer. Ben, you already went first once this week, so Chris, you're gonna take it away. What'd you think of the Andor trailer, and how are you feeling about Andor? About 2 months out from it.
Did these guys watch the Star Wars Eclipse trailer? Because it's the same trailer. It's just live action instead of really good CGI. Really odd similarities between them. This trailer is really well done. This is one of my favorite Star Wars like Disney Plus show trailers that I've ever seen. I thought that it was very kind of mysterious and interesting, and I just love how I love all the scenes on Coruscant because it's my favorite planet. So I was imagining that the location really would be singular for the series, mostly in this village or wherever Andor ends up after that. And I wasn't really anticipating. I knew that there was going to be other rebels in it, and the formation of rebellion might come into play, but I wasn't really picturing the whole like political maneuvering side of the Senate and Coruscant like that. I didn't think it would get that far into it. So showing that, having that be really prominent in the trailers gives me a new excitement for the show that its scope is going to be a little bit larger than I initially thought. So I'm really stoked for this. I can't wait for this.
Mm-hmm. Ben, what about you?
Yeah, I see. I know it doesn't make it any easier for you guys that weren't there at Celebration and didn't get to see all the trailers, but I contend Andor was the best trailer that they showed at Celebration, and I liked all. I think there was some really amazing stuff. Bad Batch probably would be my second choice, but like this one was so good. I'm glad that they actually released this so everyone can enjoy it because it was amazing, as everyone saw now, and really surprised me as kind of, I don't want to keep digging back at Kenobi, but like almost the antithesis of Kenobi. Like, you know, Kenobi is just kind of feels a little bit like, oh, this is filmed in a studio, and Andor's like, we're in the real locations, and it's just like the cinematography. And I guess maybe that's just a personal choice and a personal taste of mine, is that I'm not a huge fan of the cinematography in Obi-Wan Kenobi so far, but the cinematography in Andor looks amazing, and just so many unique shots. And I haven't even got a chance to like fully like watch it and like break it all down and take screenshots and do all the things I normally do with trailers, because you know it was 5 trailers dropping in 4 days, so you know it was a lot to take in, but it really like upped the ante and for me and someone I was already excited for Andor, but the fact that it's coming so soon and we have this trailer that shows off the visuals in such a unique way and still kind of hides it, what's the plot is, what the characters are, but we're getting Cassian, we're getting Mon Mothma. It really looks and feels like something that is different, and I think it's something that's sorely needed. I think ultimately you could look at, you know, Obi-Wan of course is different, but it's also kind of feels somewhat similar to Obi-Wan, to Mando and Book of Boba Fett. Andor feels, to me, completely different, and something that I think is desperately needed in this era of Star Wars.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is you watch this trailer. It's, almost halfway through it before you see anything that is recognizably Star Wars just like that. Right? Like there's so much in this feels like it could be just any sort of sci-fi adventure series. There's spaceships and robots and that sort of thing, but there's not stormtroopers, there's not Obi-Wan Kenobi, there's not Darth Vader. It's not until really you get to about the 50-second mark in the trailer that you start to see some Imperial looking stuff. Everything about it feels like it's going to show us a different corner of the galaxy, while also tying in what's going on in that different corner of the galaxy with what's going on at the center of the galaxy. And that's something that really excites me, is that so many of the shows thus far have been set in the Outer Rim, have been set away from, the political center of the galaxy. This one is not shying away from that. One of the, we see the Imperial Senate in the trailer. We see Mon Mothma there. So we'll actually get to see how what is happening in the core affects the Outer Rim and vice versa. And that feels like something that has been missing from Star Wars. It hasn't really been there. The original trilogy is very focused on, what's going on in the Outer Rim. The prequel trilogy is very focused on what's going on in the core. They don't really. You get a couple of moments in Phantom Menace with about how what happens in the Senate doesn't really affect Tatooine, but outside of that, you don't really get a ton of that. And then, Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker really followed that original trilogy mold of focusing on the core, or not focusing on the core, focusing on the Outer Rim. Mandalorian has been that way. Book of Boba Fett was that way. Obi-Wan has been that way. The only Star Wars story on screen that has really tried to tackle that is Last Jedi, with the Canto Bight stuff. That's where you start to see a little bit of the, what goes on with the rich and powerful people in the galaxy. How does it affect the poor people on the Outer Rims? You see a little bit of that, but not a ton of that. Not a ton of it. Rebels is Outer Rim, Resistance, Outer Rim, like all these shows, they're staying away from Coruscant. And in this show, it seems from what's been said lately that Mon Mothma is as much a lead as Cassian Andor. And so we'll be seeing this story through her eyes as well as through Cassian's eyes. And at some point, the two main characters are going to have to meet, and they will have to come to an understanding that even though they have very different experiences, they are on the same side. And by the way, I see in the chat, no, Canto Bight isn't in the core. I know it's not in the core, but the rich and powerful people all hang out there. That's the point I'm making. I'm not literally talking about the geography of the galaxy. I'm talking about the type of people that are represented by those stories. That's what I'm getting at.
It's funny, after watching this trailer, it kind of hit me that, like, okay, so we've known for a while that Cassian was a separatist. He fought against the Republic during the Clone War. He's been in this fight since he was 6 years old. It goes way back. And we see clone troopers in the trailer, which is a magnificent. But you take a step back and go like, okay, Mon Mothma becomes the leader of the Alliance to restore the Republic. How does Cassian get wrapped up in Alliance, and how does he feel about that? Being involved in something that is literally going to replace the Republic. It's going to take out the Empire, but ultimately, after Cassian dies, many years after he dies, bring the Republic back. And so that's going to be very interesting. And I doubt that Mon Mothma and Cassian are going to see eye to eye, but I imagine they're going to through the course of this series really come together in a big way. And I just love that Mon Mothma, especially being played by Genevieve O'Reilly, is just like she's back in such a prominent way, and a character that has been overlooked a lot, that I overlooked for so many years. She only shows up in Return of the Jedi. I thought General Dodonna was the leader of the rebellion, or Princess Leia. Like, who's this Mon Mothma character? And then they had General Riken. Oh, yeah, he's the new rebellion leader. I'm like, no. Mon Mothma, she's the one. She's a woman who is leading this giant rebellion. That's interesting. And giving, like, Rogue One did so much for the lore, bringing that character back into the limelight and going like, okay, this is where it began. She's been here since the beginning. And then going all the way back to, I'm assuming, her imperial, and maybe we will even see, I'm speculating that we could see like her big speech with her, like what sets her off to escape Coruscant and get involved with the Ghost and be escape. Like, we could see kind of the beginnings of that.
A cool way of they could handle that just occurred to me is like, what if that's the big moment at the end of season 1? Is like that happens, and then season 2 picks up and she's in hiding with the larger Rebel Alliance, and so that Rebels episode happens in between, and it's like the connective tissue between the two. But what you're saying, Ben, it brings up this super chat from Joel, calling it now Andor is going to be the best Disney Plus series they make. I hate using this phrase, but this feels like quote unquote grown up Star Wars dealing with mature ideas and themes. And yeah, I think that's just it. That's kind of what we're getting at here. Is I feel like this is sort of something I was talking a bit about with the Kenobi episodes. We're going to see the cost of the rebellion, and we're going to see why people rebelled in the first place. This isn't just people saying, "Oh, I don't like that Emperor Palpatine. Seems like a bad guy." We're gonna see the Empire come to Cassian's planet and crack down. And so even all these former separatists who didn't like the Republic, they will really not like the Empire. And, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That may help old Cassian and old Mon Mothma see eye to eye on these things. However, you raise a good point, Ben, that, Cassian was a separatist. Mon Mothma was, a loyalist, for lack of a better term, to the Republic. That's an interesting story for this show. It would also be an interesting story for a post-Return of the Jedi era stuff. And that's something, the Mandos verse has largely shied away from that sort of thing. Again, it's a very Outer Rim focused series. But that could be sort of interesting. Like, now that the Emperor is gone, can this alliance hold together? We know that ultimately it doesn't, because the First Order comes back, and there are people that support the First Order within the New Republic. But it would be interesting to see them, to see how that happens, and see what is tried to keep them together, and what are the things that ultimately that they ultimately split up over. Now, granted, Mon Mothma, yes, she was true to the New Republic to the end. Or true to the Republic to the end, and I suppose the New Republic. But she was true to the Republic. But she was in, Bail Organa and Padme Amidala's, what was it, the delegation of 2000 or whatever, whatever they were called. The planets that wanted an end to the Clone Wars, that wanted an end to Palpatine's emergency powers. So she could rightly argue to Cassian that they were on the same side from the beginning.
That's a good point.
That she didn't like what was going on in the Republic. They just had different ways of fighting it. He thought the way to fight it was to leave. She thought the way to fight it was to stay and try and change things from the inside. In the end, I think you could certainly make the case that he was more right. But it didn't work either way. It didn't work out well for anybody, because Palpatine just controlled everything in the prequel era. Anything that happened was under his watch.
Yeah, that's all of it. Is like Palpatine was the true enemy from the beginning and all the way to the end. Like even when we thought it was the First Order and Palpatine was dead, it was still Palpatine. He's still there. You know,
Somehow he
Palpatine
returns.
all along.
Somehow Palpatine returns.
So
Again.
you know, I would love for that to become a in-universe conversation. I would just love, like, I know there's a lot of great action, there's a lot of great, you know, visuals in this thing, but if we could just get one scene where Cassian and Mon Mothma just sit down and have a talk and just discuss their ideals and discuss what they like and don't like. One of the best scenes in Rebels is Saw Gerrera, voiced by Forrest Whitaker, and Mon Mothma, voiced by Genevieve O'Reilly, just having a yelling match outside Yavin 4 base about their views on how to fight the war. And, you know, it's incredible. So, and that would also be great to have Saw show up, which I think may happen.
I wonder how many Rogue One cameos we'll see through the course of this show. I suspect, Saw Gerrera. I think it's practically confirmed that Alan Tudyk will show up in season 2.
I wouldn't put it past them to get a Mendo in there too.
Yeah, Ben Mendelsohn, they bring back Orson Krennic. I think Galen Erso feels like a possibility in
Then
one
at
way or
least
another.
the young Jin might come in because we saw her on Coruscant.
Yeah, that's possible. I feel like we would see, you know, there's a lot of shots in this trailer of like a lot of Imperial officers sitting around. I could see Galen Erso being a part of that. I feel like season 2 of this show will really focus on the Rogue One tie-ins, from what Tony Gilroy told us at Celebration, that, you know, season 1 takes place 5 years before Rogue One, and season 2 covers everything leading up to Rogue One, basically.
That's where we might find a little bit about what Jin's doing before Catalyst.
Yeah. Well, no, no, it would be after Catalyst.
After Catalyst. That's right. Catalyst was before the flashback or the Okay, yeah. Been a while since I read that.
Yeah,
Skip through it. Read the chapter titles.
It's been it's been since 2016.
Yeah,
it's been 6 years.
Oh my gosh.
I know. It's
those kids can read now that were born when that book came out.
They're reading that book. They're like, this is great. Oh my god, the backstory between Krennic and Galen. What a story this is.
Totally poggers, dude.
I mean, jumping off of that scene at the end, I think it's the solo novelization where you have Enfys Nest and Saw Gerrera meeting, and then it's doubly so with young Leia and young Jin kind of hanging out. I think doesn't that happen? Or did I just make that up in my head? If not, if I just made it up, it needs to happen.
The solo novelization has Enfys Nest delivering the coaxium to Saw, and Jin is with. And
I just threw Leia in there.
Leia's.
Well, now we have young Leia, so there you go.
Yeah, I don't know where you got Leia from, but she can be in there.
Needs to happen, Lucasfilm. Do it.
Yeah. Why not?
Just a bunch of young kids, young Han Solo, young Leia, young everybody. Just throw them in.
I was gonna say a photo op that should happen would be Alden Ehrenreich and Vivian Lyra Blair, but that might be uncomfortable for people.
No, don't do that. I mean, yes, you had Natalie Portman and Jake Lloyd, but still, don't do that.
Yeah, no.
It kind of blows my mind that like we're dealing with the same time period. Like Solo and Obi-Wan are basically set at the same time. So
yeah, that's what's going on. That's what's going on in the galaxy.
And don't take it any further. Don't take it any further. Just leave it at that. Okay.
There's somebody goes on the Kessel Run and time dilation happens for sure, because there's no way that A New Hope old Ben is 8 years older than Kenobi Ben. There's no way. Well, he has to go to the World Between Worlds or something for a good 20 years for that to make sense.
Sure.
And not only that, but Star Wars Rebels takes place before A New Hope. Look at old Ben in Star Wars Rebels. That's got to be like 6 or 7 years after Kenobi.
He ages because he got burned. That's canon now.
But he got in the back. It's because he got out of the back to tank 1 minute too early.
Yeah.
His face turns into a prune.
Surprised they didn't like. So if you don't take the full 10 minutes of Bacta, you will age at an alarming rate.
Go figure. If Kenobi ends this show and they age Ewan McGregor to a 6-year younger version of Alec Guinness, then I will give them credit for it.
This is why the recasting doesn't matter on the Star Wars galaxy. The appearances don't make sense to begin with, so you can go from Alden to Harrison to Alden to Harrison if you want.
Okay, that's recasting, but the problem is go to the next thing.
Anyways,
and I'll tell you the problem.
No, we're not having this conversation again. The thing about Andor is. There's this shot of I'm gonna get us back on track. There's the shot of the clone troopers here, and I this is clearly some sort of flashback. My question is it a flashback to the Clone Wars or to the early days of the Empire, just like we saw in Bad Batch? Where, the clone troopers have had all of their personality stripped from them, and they're basically stormtroopers. They're just wearing the old Phase 2 armor. These are the things I'm wondering about. What do you think, Ben?
I think the obvious choice is to have that immediately post Order 66 era of Star Wars. I think that's a good place to start. But selfishly, I want something that's set before that. I want this to be during the Clone Wars. I want to see, something that's purely from a separatist perspective, and seeing the clone troopers as stormtroopers, even before the stormtroopers, before they are turned into stormtroopers by Order 66. Just see them, doing their thing and knowing, hey, they're not bad guys, but from these people's perspective, they are the bad guys. They are the oppressors. It's their planet. We're the hostiles.
Right.
And we know that the Republic did some messed up things too. And you have, going back to Clone Wars, you have Mina Monteri recounting how her husband died, and it's just like.
Right.
Yeah, I get it. I get that Dooku is evil and General Grievous is evil and the Separatists have done bad things, but from their perspective, it's the opposite, and you can't take it away from them.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that would be a fascinating angle for this show to explore. I mean, we talked a little bit about this with Mandalorian when they had the super battle droids on there. To us, super battle droids are almost a joke at this point. Any battle droid is kind of a joke because we've seen the Jedi cut them down 1,000 times. But if you're little 8-year-old Din Djarin staring up at one of those things, that's pretty intimidating.
Freaking terrifying.
And we see a whole bunch of clone troopers arrive on the scene, as long as it's before Revenge of the Sith, and we think, oh yeah, the heroes are here to save the day. But yeah, for Mina Bonteri's husband or a young Cassian Andor, perhaps. No, it means bad stuff's about to go down. Be something interesting to see explored. We got a couple of quick looks at some new characters. We see Stellan Skarsgård's character. Now, Tony Gilroy was sort of forced into saying something about Stellan's character at the panel. I cannot for the life of me remember what it was, and I have not been able to find it anywhere either. Do either of you guys remember?
Nope.
I didn't get when the first part of the panel cut out for us in the room I was in. So
yeah, there
I
was
didn't
spots
catch
that didn't come through right. Yeah, that might have been in there.
Okay. Yeah, because at one point somebody asks Tony Gilroy, "Oh, can you tell us anything about the new characters?" And he's like, "I could, but I think we should come back next year and we can talk about them then." And I'm like, all right, fair enough. And then later he sort of was like, "Oh, they want me to tell you that Stellan Skarsgård plays a character called Luthen Rael, who is who lives during the Empire." And that's all we got. That's all we got about him. I looked him up on Wikipedia. There's nothing there.
I think
so.
I think there's some character names in when you turn on the closed captioning and identifies a few people. It identifies Luthen when he's talking. There's another character earlier on in the trailer that is talking, and I'm trying to Salmon something that shows up. Yeah, it's Salmon Pack.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think so it's like the guy that goes up and is like running around, and he goes and clangs on the pipe that's like alert when they're covering up the guns and stuff like that in the early on in the trailer.
Okay. Yeah. I loved the like rhythmic nature of the whole
I
thing.
love the whole guy. He's so dramatic. He's just like does it, and it's like I have no idea what's going on. This is amazing.
Yeah.
If I ever make closed captions for Star Wars trailers, I would name all the new characters "Good Try."
Yeah. Well, another character who was identified in the closed captions is Marva.
Yeah, I was wondering who she was.
Maarva. Marva, played by Fiona Shaw. And she's the one at the end of the trailer who says, people are standing up. That's what a reckoning sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if she's talking about a reckoning against the Republic or against the Empire.
I suspect it's against the Empire, but you never know.
Or is it still in that flashback?
Yeah.
I imagine, being that this is a Rogue One prequel and it's made by the same people that made Rogue One, this is going to further blur the lines. Rogue One, huge themes about not, ultimately coming down to good guys versus bad guys and getting together and being Rogue Ones and going to take out the Empire. But it was all about the shades of gray of just as there's, good rebels, there's also kind of iffy rebels with people like Saw Gerrera and even Cassian Andor himself. So I think this show will probably drive that point home even more, that like there's people that maybe are kind of in the middle, and who what's Marva talking about? Is she talking about the Empire? She's talking about the rebellion. What's the reckoning? All this kind of stuff. Which side is she on? I think we're going to see a lot of different characters.
Mm-hmm. Generally with the trailers, I think the most obvious answer is the correct answer. So I think, she's talking about a reckoning is coming for the Empire, just like, Skarsgård, Luthen. He's saying, soon enough these days will end. There will be no rules going forward. There's something more rebellion-y about what he's saying there than, old Republic-y, but you never know. We haven't talked much about Cassian in the trailer. We don't see a ton of him, interestingly enough, in given that the show is called Andor.
But the Andor, the name is not referring to him. It's referring to his family, right?
Is it?
I like that reading of it.
I heard someone say it's about the Andors.
See, I look at this poster. The poster that they gave us.
He's one of them.
Yeah, I think it would be great to see the Andors, but at the end of the day, I think this is the Cassian Andor story.
I mean, he's the main character, but
yeah.
I think it's not. He's not the only character.
If we're going off the trailer, you could call it Star Wars Rebels, but we already
right. That's a good point.
You could probably call it Rise of the Resistance if you wanted to.
There's a lot of names you could repurpose for this.
Spark of Rebellion.
Okay, tell me this. Are they just doing makeup and beard shenanigans with this, or did they actually de-age Diego Luna? Because he looks very young in this shot.
It wouldn't surprise me either way. It wouldn't surprise me
recast.
either way.
It's a recast.
I think we will see Cassian as a younger man played by other actors in this thing.
I think the kid that we see at the beginning of the trailer.
Yeah,
that's Cassian, 100%.
Yeah, and I love that he's just wearing a regular Earth hoodie. I think like that looks like something you could just buy, at the Gap or something. But Yanni makes an interesting point in the chat, saying that we're going to see Cassian do the things he was ashamed of. I'm fascinated to see how that's going to play out over the course of this show, because, even though we've had, a hardened Mandalorian bounty hunter and a crime lord as, the leads for some of these Star Wars shows, at the end of the day, they've wound up being pretty nice, being pretty decent guys. We haven't, we didn't see Boba Fett. Boba Fett, even though he was the, taking over for Jabba, he ruled with respect. That was his whole thing. I kind of think we got to see Cassian do some things where he's not ruling with respect, so to speak. He's not acting as a true hero in the sense that we expect from these shows, and that's going to be fascinating. I think this might be this show has an interesting opportunity because it's based on an existing character, yes, but it's based on an existing character that only has 6 years worth of legacy, 6 years in one movie. Some of the reaction to Obi-Wan Kenobi or Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, they tried to do things with those characters that were different, where they weren't the perfect heroes that we always imagined them to be. And, the reaction could be very negative at times. There's some people that really don't like the way Obi-Wan's been handled in the show. I don't agree, but it's out there and people are entitled to that opinion. Absolutely. But it's out there. This is a character that they could really, break down and have him be pretty awful. And, there lots of people love Cassian. There's a great fan base for him, but it's not the same as Obi-Wan or Luke. And so I feel like there's more opportunity here.
I hope they're not gun shy to basically make Cassian a terrible person, like to make him a bad guy. Because I think Star Wars, especially recently, has a history of doing this, and in A New Hope, we're supposed to believe that Han's a bad guy. He's kind of iffy. He's kind of a scoundrel. We don't really know where he's in, and then he becomes good at the end. And then Solo comes along and kind of recontextualizes all that and says, well, he was a good guy all along. He was just kind of trying to pretend to be bad and all this stuff. And I get it. Lawrence Kasdan, the people that laid the groundwork for that character came back and did that. I'm fine with that. I think it works. But there tends to be, in any storytelling medium, tends to be kind of almost an argument between writers when it comes to writing something. And being that Tony Gilroy has been with this character kind of from the beginning, hopefully he can kind of structure this in a way that, Cassian is good enough to be someone we care about, someone we are rooting for, but we're not necessarily rooting for him because he's doing good things. We're hoping he does the good thing eventually. We know he does the good thing eventually, but right now he's not the best guy. He's doing some really bad stuff. He's assassinating people and, really doing some messed up stuff. And, that's what I want to see. I want when he's talking about, we've all done terrible things for the rebellion. I want to see that. I want to see what he did.
Yeah. Do you think people, same way people go, George Lucas would never about Luke and Obi-Wan, do you think they'll be going, Gary Whitta never would have done this with his Cassian?
Oh, I hope not.
You can almost bet on it. There will be at least one, if not 100 people on Twitter screaming.
Gary Whitta was the only person who could have saved Star Wars. And now they're ignoring him.
It's Jake Andor. It's not not my Cassian.
Oh no.
Any other thoughts on the Andor trailer? Anything else that jumps out at the two of you that they're interested in seeing more of as the series progresses?
The Senate, lots of Senate, please, all Senate scenes. Thank you.
Nothing but Senate scenes.
Yeah.
I like the gunships that we see. I don't know what kind of gunships they are. We see a lot of what looks to be local government people. What I'm guessing is they're not Empire or Rebellion. They're kind of maybe people that are like backed up by the Empire. We see all these, they're in these kind of nice uniforms. I'm assuming maybe that's where from Cassian's homeworld. But maybe that's where their gunships are. Maybe they're early Imperial gunships. Who knows? Maybe kind of precursor, like coming between the LAATs and the stuff we get with the Empire. But it looks really cool, and I think seeing kind of different versions of so many kind of in different eras of Star Wars in regards to like getting clone troopers and stormtroopers and TIE fighters. We're kind of running the gambit of all these different iconographies, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It looks really good. I think the whole trailer it's magnificent, and there's some magnificent wide shots, and there's mountains and rivers and streams and all kinds of stuff. And that's this. I think we've all kind of subconsciously kind of picked up on like when something at least could have been shot in the volume. I think especially when you get to like, the tragedy in The Mandalorian, you're like, oh, this was not shot on the volume. This definitely was shot outside. It was shot in Simi Valley. That's where it was shot. Versus, now it's, this looks way more like they aren't faking this. They went outdoors with real people, real trees and real water, practical effects.
Exactly. All right. So Andor, of course, premieres, we learned at Celebration, August 31st. So just under 3 months away, a little over 2.5 months until the premiere of that. And 12 episodes for season 1. So it'll take us pretty much through till about Christmas time, till December, and then it'll be a short wait after that until The Mandalorian season 3. And as we'll talk about next week, there'll also be some other stuff going on at the same time, like The Bad Batch and Tales of the Jedi, and all that interesting animated stuff that is also going on. But I think with that, we can begin to wrap things up for this week.
All right, awesome. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening and watching to the show. We'll be back with another episode, same time, same place, next Thursday on YouTube, and shortly thereafter on your favorite podcast catchers. If you want to catch us on YouTube, you can find us at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, every Thursday on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel. And between shows, make sure you follow us on social media at the SWU so you don't miss any breaking Star Wars news throughout the week. Dominic, thank you so much for hosting.
It was my pleasure. As always, great fun talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi, talking about Andor, and still getting used to the fact that we're not still at Celebration. But, it's sad. We spend most of our time not at Celebration, and yet we spend just a little bit of time there, and that becomes the norm so quickly.
Yeah.
Star
Wars Summer Camp 2024. Let's do it.
Let's go. I mean, we're Celebration London is quite literally just around the corner. I think we're 10 months away from it now.
Oh, no, that's not a lot of time to buy those very expensive international flights.
Yeah. I mean, expensive for you guys. It's about the same for me, honestly. Going London or California.
Just going across the pond.
Yeah,
well, I have one nickel.
There you go. It's a good start. That's a good start. You have to switch that to pounds and pence and shillings and
I have
galleons
and a tuppence.
Yeah, coppers. All that stuff. But yeah, it's been fun. Can't wait to do all this again next week and talk about the penultimate episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Heck yeah, and you can follow Dominic on social media at DominicJ25. Ben, thank you so much for hosting as well.
Wait a minute, you're saying that they're doing Celebration in London, England?
Yes.
Not London, Texas? Come on.
Oh.
Come on, man. This is not cool. Yeah.
I already booked my hotel in London, Texas. I booked that Motel 6. It was really cheap. I was so stoked.
See, and here I was booking hotels in London, Ontario. It's just,
right.
Just.
Dang, I got 10 months. I gotta renew my passport. I gotta pack again? I haven't even unpacked from the last
Just
one.
don't unpack and repack. Just leave it packed.
Yeah.
Just
How
always
many
have your
will be
celebration
fine?
bag with all your celebration stuff. Just leave it there.
Yeah,
and
it's like a go bag. You just
Yeah.
gotta have it ready to leave.
Holy hell! Am I supposed to get this back across the pond? Okay.
Hey, does
took
it float?
It cost me a fortune to get it back here from California.
You gotta put it in. You gotta put those duck wings on it, and just push it, and it'll go. The Gulf Stream will bring it across to Cardiff.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you were supposed to introduce me or not. I butted in.
I was in the middle of
Thanks so much
saying,
for hosting, Ben. Yes,
thank
it was a
you.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a lot of stuff to do. Yeah,
I bet
the indoor was
Harmony-
good, and yeah,
Let's
it's
check
good.
this
Thanks.
on the next week. IPC. Let's watch it. It's good. Jurassic Park. Apparently, it's been in a bunch of the Jurassic Park.
We'll be talking Jurassic Park and either ripping it to shreds or probably we'll be arguing with each other because I think Zach and Mondo loved it. And I may hate it, so we may kill each other on live on air. Come watch.
Dominion or dumb minion or dumber minion. We'll find out. Check it out. All right. What else? Oh yeah, thank you for everybody for super chatting and stacking up those Dutch pancakes for Celebration London. Thanks to our channel members. If you're new to the show, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/the SWU. That's where you can get our exclusive merch. That's where you can support us financially. That's where you can get the pre-shows. We had a kind of like not very in-depth conversation about Stranger Things because we haven't all finished it yet, but we kind of got the ball rolling on the Stranger Things discussion on the pre-show this week. So you can find that any pledge level at patreon.com/the SWU gives you exclusive access to that. Check out that Culture Slate store. Check out Star Wars Culture and Eye on Canon. And make sure you drop us an email at swunderworld@gmail.com, especially about your celebration experiences, and we'll get to it on the show. We'll be back next week. Until then, for Dom and Ben, my name is Chris, and may the Force be with you.
It's a wrap.